Humans and Zelari were supposed to be allies, but with each passing day, Noah grew more uncertain about their fragile peace. The Zelari were a powerful and ancient race, known for their unyielding discipline and superiority. They looked down on humanity as a lesser species, but the alliance was necessary for survival. Both races faced a greater threat, an unknown enemy who had the power to destroy them both. The ship's hallways echoed with the sounds of soldiers moving in formation, their footsteps purposeful, their faces stern. As Noah passed by the doors of the command center, he couldn't help but feel a bit of unease. This wasn't the first time he had been invited to a summit with the Zelari leaders, but something about today felt different. Inside, the room was dark, with only the soft glow of holographic maps illuminating the faces of the Zelari High Command. Admiral Liara Varys stood at the center of the room, her piercing violet eyes scanning the screens. She was known throughout the Empire for her ruthless efficiency and unshakable loyalty to the Zelari throne. To most, she was an unapproachable figure, a symbol of the Empire's might. Noah had heard the rumors, how she had risen through the ranks by eliminating anyone who stood in her way. But there was something about her that intrigued him, even if he would never admit it. "Captain Hart," Liara said, her voice as cold as the steel of her ship. "Glad you could join us." Noah gave a small nod, but he didn't speak. He was still trying to figure out what exactly they wanted from him. A human officer was exactly the kind of person the Zelari normally consulted, but Noah had proven himself in combat. He was part of the joint military mission to defend the galaxy from the unknown enemy. That was the only reason he was here. The room fell silent as Liara continued. "We are here to discuss the increasing threat of the rebels. There are factions within our empire that seek to destabilize our alliance with the humans. They believe that the Zelari should stand alone, unchallenged. Their actions will not be tolerated." Noah listened intently, knowing that this meeting was crucial. The Zelari were a proud people, and any threat to their authority was taken seriously. He glanced around the room, seeing the faces of the other officers, all of them waiting for Liara's next words. "The situation is delicate," she continued. "I have been tasked with eliminating this threat, but I need to know where the human forces stand. Are you prepared to fight for the survival of our alliance?" Noah didn't hesitate. "Yes, we're with you. We've seen the consequences of division. We have to stand united." Liara's gaze locked with his, and for a brief moment, Noah felt something shift between them. There was no mistaking the intensity in her eyes, but there was also something else, something he couldn't quite place. It wasn't just authority, it was a depth he hadn't expected from someone like her. He quickly looked away, his face flushing ever so slightly. He wasn't here to form bonds. He was here to do his job. The meeting continued, but Noah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The rebellion wasn't the only problem they faced, but the secrecy surrounding it was unnerving. As Liara discussed her plans with the other officers, Noah noticed how calculated her every move was. She was the embodiment of control, and yet there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice that caught him off guard. After the meeting, Noah was dismissed, but his mind was racing. He couldn't shake the image of Liara, standing tall and resolute, commanding the room with the power of someone who had seen and done things most people would never understand. He had heard of her tactics in battle, how she led her fleet to victory time and time again, but there was something about her presence that made him uneasy in a way he couldn't explain. As he walked down the long corridor of the warship, Noah heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw a Zelari officer approaching, a woman with sharp features and a serious expression. She stopped in front of him and gave a small, respectful bow. "Captain Hart," she said, her voice low. "The Admiral has requested your presence in the strategy room. She wishes to discuss the next steps." Noah was taken aback. He hadn't expected to be summoned by her so soon after the meeting. "What's this about?" he asked. The officer didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gave a small smile. "You'll see soon enough. The Admiral is particular about her plans." Noah nodded and followed the officer through the ship's maze of corridors. His mind raced with questions. Why had Liara singled him out? What did she need from him? And most importantly, what was going on beneath the surface of the Zelari Empire that they weren't telling him? As they reached the strategy room, the officer gestured for him to enter. Inside, Liara was standing at a massive holographic map, her eyes scanning the various battle zones. She didn't look up when Noah entered, but she spoke. "Captain, I need you to understand the gravity of our situation," she said, her voice low and steady. "The rebellion is just the beginning. There are those within our own ranks who would see the Zelari Empire burn, and they will stop at nothing to see it happen." Noah felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about a rebel faction. It was about something much bigger. He looked at Liara, and for the first time he saw the weight of leadership in her eyes. She wasn't just an admiral anymore. She was someone who was about to make a decision that could change the course of history. "I'm listening," Noah said. Liara's gaze met his once more, and this time there was no mistaking the intensity between them. Her eyes softened for a brief moment, and in that fleeting instant, Noah realized that she too was human. Despite her alien appearance, despite her cold exterior, she was just as vulnerable as he was. "I need you to trust me," she said quietly. "The path ahead will be dangerous, and not everyone will make it out alive. But if we're to survive, we must act together." Noah nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never expected to be in a position like this, working side by side with an alien admiral, risking everything for a fragile peace. But as he looked into her eyes, he realized that the future of both their species might just depend on the choices they made together. The days following the meeting were tense, and the air on the Zelari warship grew heavier with each passing hour. Captain Noah Hart found himself walking through the narrow corridors, thinking about the conversation he had with Admiral Liara Veris. Her words echoed in his mind, "If we're to survive, we must act together." Those words, filled with a strange sense of urgency, were like a call to action that Noah couldn't ignore. But despite the growing trust between them, Noah felt a sense of unease. The mission they were about to embark on was far from simple. The rebel faction within the Zelari Empire was more organized than anyone had initially thought. Their base of operations was a secret, and their strength was growing by the day. The alliance between humans and Zelari was fragile, and if this rebellion wasn't stopped quickly, it could rip everything apart. Noah knew that peace between the two species was their only chance of survival, but how could they achieve that with so many forces working against them? Liara had been uncharacteristically quiet after their meeting, spending hours in her command room, poring over battle plans. Noah could see the exhaustion in her eyes every time they crossed paths, but he could also see something else, a determination that burned brighter than ever before. Despite her icy exterior, Noah had begun to sense the weight of her responsibility. She wasn't just an admiral, she was the last line of defense for her people, a leader in the most difficult time of her life. One evening, Noah was summoned again to the strategy room. As he entered, he saw Liara standing in front of the same holographic map, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. The map displayed a series of military outposts, each marked with a red dot. They were close to finding the rebel base, but the path to it was a maze of risks. Liara turned as Noah entered, her face drawn with concern. "We've narrowed down their location," Liara said, her voice steady but tense. "They're hiding in the dark nebula just beyond the outer rim. It's a dangerous area, full of asteroid fields and radiation. It will take all of our strength to break through." Noah studied the map carefully. The nebula was a place that few ships dared to enter. The hazards were too great, but if the rebels were hiding there, it was the only place left to look. He looked up at Liara, who met his gaze with a focused intensity. "Do we have the resources to pull this off?" he asked. Liara hesitated for a moment before answering. "We'll need everything we've got, a full fleet along with your human ships, but we can't afford to fail." The silence in the room was deafening. Noah could see the weight of her words hanging between them. The stakes had never been higher, and neither of them could afford to lose. "Are you sure about this?" Noah asked. "If we attack their base, it could escalate things further. The Zelari might see this as a betrayal." "I know," Liara said, her voice low, "but if we don't act now, the rebellion will spread. The Empire will be lost, and with it, any hope for peace between us and the humans." Noah understood the truth in her words. He had seen the divisions in the Zelari ranks, the whispers of rebellion, and the way some of them looked at him with distrust. They saw humans as weak, as nothing more than pawns in their grand game. But Noah wasn't just a pawn. He was a captain, a leader, and someone who had fought for his people. He had earned the trust of his crew, and he had earned Liara's trust too. "This mission," Noah said, stepping closer to the map, "it's not just about stopping the rebels." It's about ensuring the survival of both our species. Liara gave a small nod. Exactly. The mission was set into motion. The ships were prepared, the fleet organized. Noah's crew worked tirelessly, making sure everything was ready for the dangerous journey ahead. As the hours passed, Noah found himself reflecting on the risks. It wasn't just the rebellion that worried him, it was the future of humanity itself. If this mission failed, the alliance would be shattered, but if they succeeded, there was hope for peace. As the fleet prepared to leave, Liara called for Noah to join her on the command bridge. The warship's metallic walls hummed with energy as the crew worked in sync, preparing the ship for the journey into the nebula. The atmosphere was tense, but Noah could sense a growing bond between him and Liara. They were both aware of the stakes, and yet there was a strange sense of camaraderie that had developed between them. Perhaps it was because they both understood what it meant to lead. To bear the weight of so many lives on their shoulders, the warship's engines roared to life, and Noah took his position on the bridge. Liara stood next to him, her eyes scanning the stars ahead. The nebula was just within reach. The mission was about to begin. "We'll make it through this," Noah said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. Liara glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "We have to?" As the fleet moved toward the nebula, Noah's mind raced with the possibilities. What if they encountered more resistance than they expected? What if the rebel faction had more power than they'd realized? The journey through the nebula would be treacherous, and no one knew what awaited them on the other side. But there was no turning back now. The ship entered the dark nebula, its sensors flickering as the asteroid fields loomed ahead. The bright lights of the fleet faded as they moved deeper into the darkness. The stars above were nothing more than faint glimmers, and the silence in the ship was almost suffocating. Noah gripped the controls tightly, knowing that this was the moment that would define everything. "Admiral," one of the officers called out, "we've picked up something on the radar." Liara's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer to the screen. "What is it?" "Unknown ships." "They're moving fast, too fast to be ours." Noah's heart sank. The rebels had anticipated them. This wasn't just a mission to stop the rebellion, it was a battle for survival. Liara turned to Noah, her expression hardening. "Get ready, we're going to fight for everything." The crew scrambled into action, and Noah's heart pounded in his chest. He knew that the battle ahead would be like no other they had faced. But there was no turning back. This was the moment of truth, and they would either survive it together or perish. As the first shots rang out, Noah took a deep breath. There was no way of knowing what would happen next. But one thing was certain, the fate of both their species hung in the balance. The battle in the nebula was unlike anything Captain Noah Hart had ever experienced. The dark clouds of the nebula shrouded their ships, and the only light came from the flashes of laser fire and explosions that rocked the fleet. It was a chaotic mess of twisting asteroid fields, flickering sensors, and enemy fire. The fleet was in the thick of it, trying to break through the rebel forces that had ambushed them. Noah's hands gripped the controls as the ship jerked under another hit, the alarm blaring through the bridge. "Status report," Liara's voice cut through the noise, calm and commanding as always. "We've lost 2 ships, Admiral," the officer at the communications station replied. "The rebels are more organized than we thought. They're targeting our weaker ships first." "Damn it," Noah muttered, his eyes scanning the holographic map. "We need to get to their command ship before this turns into a massacre." Liara stood behind him, her eyes steady on the battlefield. She was the picture of control, but Noah could see the worry beneath her composed exterior. Every decision she made carried the weight of the entire fleet, and the rebellion they were fighting had no mercy. "I'm going to take us closer to their flagship," Noah said, his voice firm. "We need to cut the head off the snake. If we don't, this won't end." Liara looked at him, her gaze piercing. She didn't question him, she just nodded. "Do it." Noah immediately gave the order, and the ship lurched forward, pushing through the chaos. The sounds of explosions and laser fire filled the air as they charged into the heart of the rebel fleet. He could see the enemy ships now, their sleek designs gliding through the asteroid field with deadly precision. But Noah wasn't about to let them have the upper hand. He pushed the ship harder, dodging asteroids and enemy fire, closing in on the rebel flagship. "Hold tight," Noah said, his grip tightening on the controls. "We're going in." Just as they reached the flagship's perimeter, a massive explosion rocked their ship. The hull groaned under the pressure, and the lights flickered. Noah could hear the ship's system struggling to stay online. His heart raced as he struggled to maintain control. "Report!" Liara's voice was urgent but still steady. "We're damaged," Noah said, his voice tight. "Engines are down to 30%. Shields are holding, but barely. We can't go much longer." Liara's face was hard, the lines of stress etched deeper into her features. She knew they didn't have much time. But as the flagship loomed ahead, something inside her seemed to snap. She turned to Noah, her eyes filled with a fire that had not been there before. "Captain," she said, her voice unwavering, "we need to board their ship. I'm going in." Noah stared at her in disbelief. "What? Are you crazy? We can't risk it. We're losing ships out here." "I'm giving the orders now," Liara snapped. "If we don't board that ship and take out their leader, we'll never stop this rebellion. The Empire is already falling apart, and we have no choice but to act." Noah felt a surge of anger, but he could see the conviction in her eyes. He knew that her mind was made up, and there was no changing it now. The rebellion had gone too far, and the only way to end it was to take down its leader, and Liara was willing to risk everything to do it. "Fine," Noah said, gritting his teeth, "but I'm going with you." Liara didn't argue. Instead, she gave him a brief nod. "Then let's do this." The crew scrambled to prepare for the boarding action, and the ship's airlocks were ready. Noah's heart pounded in his chest as he donned his helmet and checked his gear. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of both their species. He glanced at Liara, who stood beside him, her posture tense but resolute. The airlock opened, and they were propelled into the vacuum of space, using magnetic boots to cling to the side of the rebel flagship. They made their way toward the ship's entrance, moving quickly and quietly. Every step was critical. They couldn't afford to make a sound. They had to get in, find the leader, and neutralize the threat. The fate of the fleet, and possibly the entire galaxy, depended on them. As they reached the entrance, Liara signaled for Noah to stand back. She hacked into the ship's security system with swift precision, overriding the doors. The heavy metal doors slid open with a hiss, and they slipped inside. The hallway was eerily quiet, the dim lights casting long shadows across the walls. Noah's senses were on high alert, every step echoing in the silence. "Stay close," Liara whispered, her voice barely audible. "We move fast, we find their leader, and we end this." Noah nodded, his pulse racing. They moved silently through the corridors, their weapons ready. As they neared the command center, they encountered a small group of rebel soldiers. Liara didn't hesitate. She moved swiftly, her training and experience taking over. She disarmed one soldier before he even had a chance to react, taking him down with precise efficiency. Noah followed her lead, knocking another soldier out cold with a swift punch. They didn't stop to check the bodies. There was no time to waste. The door to the command center was just ahead. Liara signaled for Noah to take the lead, and he did. He kicked the door open with a force that sent it crashing against the wall. Inside, the rebel leader was standing in front of a holographic map, his back turned to them. He looked like a man who had seen too much war, his face hardened by years of fighting. But when he turned to face them, there was no fear in his eyes, just cold defiance. "You're too late," the leader said, his voice low and calm. "The rebellion is already won." Liara stepped forward, her gun aimed directly at his chest. "Not if we stop you first." The rebel leader smirked. "You think you can defeat us? You think the Zelari Empire is strong enough to control this galaxy? You're nothing more than pawns in a game you'll never win." Noah could feel the tension in the air as Liara's grip tightened on her weapon. But before she could speak, the rebel leader raised his hand, signaling for his guards to move. The command center doors slammed shut behind them, trapping Noah and Liara inside. Liara didn't hesitate. She fired first, taking down two of the guards with precision. But there were too many. The leader had anticipated their move. Noah pulled Liara back, forcing her to take cover behind a large console. Bullets whizzed past them, but Noah wasn't focused on the danger. He was focused on the plan. They had to act fast. The longer they stayed, the more likely they were to be overwhelmed. "We need to disable their weapon systems," Noah said, his voice urgent. "If we take out their shields, the fleet can finish the job." Liara nodded. She knew exactly what he meant. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward the central control panel. Noah covered her as she worked quickly, hacking into the system. He could see the determination in her eyes as she input the commands, and he knew that this was the moment that would decide everything. The rebel leader was shouting orders to his remaining forces, but it was too late. With a final keystroke, Liara disabled the rebel flagship's weapons and shields. The fleet outside had their opening. Noah turned to face Liara. "It's done. Let's get out of here." But before they could make their escape, the rebel leader lunged at them, a knife in his hand. Noah acted without thinking, tackling the man to the ground. The two struggled, but Noah's training gave him the edge. He knocked the knife out of the leader's hand, and with one swift motion, he incapacitated him. As the rebel leader lay unconscious on the floor, Liara looked at Noah, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. They had done it, but it had come at a cost. "We've won," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Noah nodded. "But the war is far from over." They had taken down the leader of the rebellion, but the true fight for peace was only just beginning. The aftermath of the battle was quiet. The rebel flagship had been neutralized, and the rebel leader was in custody. But even with this victory, the tension in the air was thick. Captain Noah Hart stood on the bridge of the Zelari warship, staring out at the stars through the massive windows. The fleet had regrouped after the assault, but Noah's mind was far from calm. It was one thing to defeat the rebels. It was another to trust that their actions had truly brought peace. The Zelari Empire was vast, and there were many factions within it, each with its own agenda. Liara stood beside him, her gaze focused ahead, her posture rigid and controlled. She hadn't spoken much since the battle ended. Noah could tell that she was troubled, but she remained composed, as always. It was one of the qualities that made her such an effective leader, but it also made her distant. He wondered, for the first time, how much of her true self she kept hidden behind the unbreakable facade she wore. Noah turned to her. "We did it," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "But I don't think this is over. The Empire is still divided. There's a lot we don't know." Liara glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I know, this was only one battle. The rebellion may have been defeated, but there are still those who want to tear this alliance apart. We've only seen the tip of the iceberg." Noah's gut twisted at her words. He had been hoping that the rebellion was the main issue, but it seemed like there was something much larger at play. It wasn't just a group of rebels, it was an entire network of dissent that stretched across the Empire. "We need to find out who's behind this," Noah said, his voice filled with determination. "We need to know who's really pulling the strings." Liara looked away, her gaze distant. "I've been trying to uncover the truth, but it's difficult. The Zelari Empire is built on secrets. There are too many people with too much power. We don't even know who we can trust anymore." Noah felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The words she spoke weren't just about the rebels, they were about the Empire itself. Liara's own people might be turning against her, and if that was true, then the fragile peace they had fought for could shatter at any moment. "There's something you're not telling me, isn't there?" Noah asked, his voice steady but his eyes searching hers. "What's really going on, Liara?" Liara's eyes flickered with a brief flash of something, fear perhaps, but she quickly masked it. She turned toward the control panel, her fingers moving over the buttons in a practiced manner, but Noah could tell that she wasn't fully focused. "I'm not sure what you mean," she replied, her tone distant. "Liara," Noah said, taking a step closer, "I've been with you through all of this. We've fought together. If there's something I need to know, you can't keep it from me." There was a long pause before she finally spoke again. "There's more to the story. More than just rebels and traitors." She paused, as if weighing her next words carefully. "The Empire is rotten to its core, Noah. There are factions within the Zelari leadership that want to see it fall, to rebuild it in their own image. They're using the rebellion to create chaos, to divide us and make us weaker." Noah's mind raced as he processed her words. "You mean this wasn't just about the rebels? Someone inside the Empire has been pulling the strings all along?" Liara nodded, her expression grim. "Yes. The rebellion was just a tool. There's a far greater threat, one that has been hiding in the shadows for years. People within the Empire have been working to destabilize it, to create enough chaos that they can take control." The realization hit Noah like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a fight against rebels, it was a battle for the very soul of the Zelari Empire itself. And if Liara's suspicions were correct, then the person responsible for all of this might be someone she trusted. "Who are they?" Noah asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Who's behind this?" Liara's face hardened. "I don't know, not yet, but I've been gathering information. There's a shadow group, high-ranking members of the Zelari leadership. They've been working in secret, manipulating events and turning the factions against each other. I think they've been using the rebellion to test the waters. If they succeed, the Empire will be theirs. Noah's mind was spinning. If what Liara was saying was true, then everything they had fought for, everything they had sacrificed, was part of a much larger plan. A plan that wasn't just about saving humanity or stopping the rebellion. It was about seizing power. "They're using us," Noah muttered, his fists clenching. "They've been using both our people, Zelari and humans, against each other." Liara's gaze turned toward him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Yes, and I'm afraid they've already infiltrated the highest levels of the Empire. We can't trust anyone, not even those closest to us." A sick feeling settled in Noah's stomach. The idea that someone in Liara's own ranks, the people she had trusted, might be involved in this conspiracy was almost too much to bear. But as much as he hated to admit it, Liara was right. They couldn't trust anyone anymore. The Empire was corrupt, and the rebellion was only a symptom of a much deeper problem. "Then what do we do?" Noah asked, his voice low. Liara took a deep breath, her eyes hardening. "We expose them. We find the people responsible for this and bring them down, no matter the cost." Noah nodded. He knew that the road ahead would be dangerous, but there was no turning back. They had to stop this, or the galaxy would fall into chaos. But as much as they had accomplished so far, Noah knew that the true battle was just beginning. As they prepared to make their next move, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to grow longer, and every corner of the ship felt like it was hiding something. Someone was out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when they did, Noah wasn't sure if he and Liara would be ready. Later that night, as Noah stood on the bridge, lost in thought, a voice came over the comm system. "Captain Hart," a familiar voice said, "we've intercepted a transmission." "It's from a high-ranking official within the Zelari leadership." Noah's heart skipped a beat. "Who is it?" "It's Admiral Karak," the officer replied. "He's requesting an urgent meeting." Noah's stomach twisted. Admiral Karak was one of the highest-ranking officials in the Zelari fleet. He was a man of power, a man who commanded respect. But Noah had always been wary of him. Karak had a reputation for being ruthless, and there was something about him that didn't sit right. Liara stepped beside Noah, her face pale but resolute. "It's him," she said quietly. "He's one of them. He's the one who's been pulling the strings from the inside." Noah's heart raced. The traitor they had been searching for was finally revealing himself. And now they had no choice but to confront him. The air on the bridge was thick with tension. The communication officer's voice echoed in the quiet room, reporting Admiral Karak's request for an urgent meeting. Liara stood next to Noah, her expression a mask of calm, but Noah could see the subtle signs of anxiety, her tense shoulders, the way her fingers tapped lightly on the edge of the console. Karak was not just any admiral. He was one of the highest-ranking figures in the Zelari Empire, a man whose loyalty to the throne had been unquestioned for years. But now, Noah understood something Liara had been trying to avoid. The real enemy was much closer than they thought. "Do we trust him?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Liara's eyes never left the view screen ahead. "No, he's been part of this corruption from the start. He's been using his position to manipulate things behind the scenes. He's the one who has been guiding the rebels, pretending to stand for the Empire while plotting its downfall." Noah could feel the weight of her words. Everything they had fought for was being ripped apart by people who hid behind false facades, pretending to be loyal while betraying their own. The stakes had never been higher. The alliance, the peace they had worked so hard to protect, was now hanging by a thread. Karak wasn't just a threat to the Zelari Empire, he was a threat to everything. "We can't let him get away with this," Noah said, his voice firm. He knew Liara didn't need to hear this. She was already resolved, but saying the words out loud gave him a sense of clarity. "We take him down no matter the cost." Liara nodded, her expression hardening. "We need to be careful. Karak has powerful allies. If we move too quickly, we'll risk losing everything." Noah understood, but sometimes moving quickly was the only option. The longer they waited, the more damage Karak could do. He could feel the weight of his decision hanging over him, the knowledge that every action from here on out would decide the future of both their species. "Let's end this," Liara said, her voice as cold as steel. "For good." Noah's hands tightened on the edge of the console. He wasn't just fighting for the survival of the Alliance anymore. He was fighting for the survival of something far more personal, the trust that had formed between him and Liara. It had been a long, hard journey, and now, at the very end, they had to trust each other completely. They had to take down the traitor together. The ship's engines hummed with power as they made their way to the meeting point. The bridge fell silent, the crew working in unison to prepare for what lay ahead. Noah kept his eyes on Liara. She had been his commander, his ally, but now she was something else. Someone who had defied everything to stand with him, someone who had put her trust in him just as much as he had put his trust in her. Their fates were now tied together in a way that could not be undone. As they approached Karak's position, Noah could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. They would confront him. They would fight to stop him. But as the time grew nearer, Noah couldn't help but wonder if there was more at stake here than just the future of the Empire. If they succeeded, they would restore peace. But if they failed, everything they had worked for would be lost. The meeting room was dark, lit only by the soft glow of the holographic display at the center. Admiral Karak stood at the far end, his back to them, staring out at the stars. He turned slowly as they entered, his face betraying no emotion. But his eyes, they were sharp, calculating, filled with the arrogance of someone who believed they were untouchable. "Admiral Liara Varys," Karak said, his voice smooth and controlled. "Captain Hart, I'm glad you could join me. I trust your journey was comfortable." Noah's fists clenched. The man was pretending nothing was wrong, acting as if this was just another day. But Noah could see the truth beneath the surface, the lies, the deception. The time for polite words was over. "We know what you've been doing, Karak," Liara said, her voice cold and unwavering. "You've been playing both sides. You've been using the rebellion as a tool, all while pretending to be loyal to the throne. You're nothing but a traitor." Karak smiled, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a smile of someone who had won before the game had even started. "You think I'm the traitor?" he asked, his voice dripping with mock disbelief. "No, Admiral, you and your human ally have no idea what's truly at stake here. The Empire is dying, it's weak, and it's fragile. I've been doing what needed to be done, what the Zelari Empire should have done a long time ago. I've been preparing for the future." "You've been preparing for your own future," Liara snapped, stepping forward. "You're a power-hungry fool, Karak. You want to control the Empire, and you're willing to destroy everything to get it." The smile never left Karak's face. "You're too late. The pieces are already in place. The rebellion is just the first step. I've already started the process of tearing this empire apart. By the time you realize it, it will be too late for you to stop me." Noah took a step forward, his voice filled with anger. "We'll stop you. We're not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for." Karak's eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment the smile faltered. But then it returned, wider than ever. "You don't get it, do you? The Empire is beyond saving. It's been corrupt for centuries. I'm just the one who's willing to do what's necessary to fix it. If that means tearing it down and starting over, then so be it." Liara's hand moved toward her weapon, but Noah stopped her. "Wait," he whispered. He could feel it in his gut. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a battle for the soul of the Zelari Empire. They couldn't let themselves be dragged into a fight with Karak's twisted vision. They needed to expose him for what he truly was. Karak seemed to sense the shift in the air. He turned toward the communication panel and pressed a few buttons. Suddenly, the room was filled with a sharp, mechanical whine as the ship's security system activated. The doors slammed shut with a deafening clang, trapping them inside. "You think you can stop me?" Karak's voice was filled with venom now. "You think you can defeat me? I am the future of this empire, and you will be nothing more than a footnote in its history." "No," Liara said, her voice full of fury. "You are a coward hiding behind lies and manipulation. You will never control this empire, not while I stand." With that, Liara moved, her weapon drawn and aimed at Karak. But before either of them could make a move, Karak raised his hand. A flash of light erupted from the side, and suddenly two of Karak's guards emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised. Noah reacted quickly, pulling Liara behind cover as the room erupted into chaos. He fired, taking down one of the guards, but Karak's men were everywhere. The room was filled with the sound of gunfire and shouts as Noah and Liara fought back, the reality of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a war that Karak had already won. But Noah wasn't going to give up. Not now, not ever. As the battle raged on, Noah realized something. Karak had underestimated them. He had thought he could manipulate and control everything. But Noah and Liara weren't just soldiers. They were survivors, and they would fight until the very end, no matter the odds.